I know we have several people who have are here for the public comment section of the meeting. If you're certainly welcome to stay on the call, but please mute your microphone if you are not a member of the committee, or a presenter. And when we do get to the public comment portion of the meeting, I believe the city clerk has everybody who signed up to speak, so I will ask her to call on you individually. If you did not sign up in advance to speak, that's fine. You may still speak, and we'll, after we get through the list of speakers who signed up, we'll ask for any other comments. Please just state your name for the record when you are called on. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmembers Roberson.
Here.
Van Camp.
Here.
Mayor Weir.
Here. Mr. City Manager, if you'd like to begin with the overview of staff recommendations for the public.
Yes, good morning, Madam Mayor, members of the Transit Committee. I do apologize. I seem to be having some difficulty with my camera this morning. So that said, I thank you for convening this meeting this morning. I know this is a critically important topic. As part of our submitted budget proposal for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021, one of the proposals put forward is alteration to the city's transit system. Specifically, what is being proposed, just at a high-level overview, is maintaining our paratransit service, which services our elderly and disabled populations, maintaining our intercity service through KCATA, runs multiple routes throughout the day between Independence and Kansas City, Missouri, to connect with that transit spine. But it does contemplate elimination of the fixed route, or more commonly known as the Indy bus system, within the city of Independence. Our Community Development Director, Tom Scannell, is going to walk you through a more extensive presentation this morning with the specifics of that proposal. But I will say this is not a proposal that was put forward lightly or in haste. Our financial challenges were real prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, but that has accelerated our fiscal pain and necessitated some very dramatic and severe cuts to the budget. General fund itself being reduced substantially this year by over 7%. And this was as you'll see in the presentation, a decision rooted in data, though certainly this is an emotional decision, one that is not without severe adverse impact on our community and oftentimes among the more vulnerable populations in our community. It is one that was brought forward with data, as you'll see. I will, as I transition to our formal presentation, I do, though, want to thank Mayor Weir, members of the committee. I know how important this issue is to all of you, and since the time that this was initially brought to you, you've been working feverishly to try to identify solutions that would offset this proposal, which staff is exceptionally supportive of. We want to find solutions that not only preserve the service, but become a sustainable solution so that this conversation doesn't come forward again. Those conversations, I know you will all give more detail on that for the benefit of the public, but those are happening frequently. Those conversations are meaningful, and we remain optimistic that we'll be able to identify. But what's brought us here today is to bring forward this in more detail for the committee. And with that, Mayor, I would suggest transitioning to Community Development Director Tom Scannell for the formal presentation.
Hey, Becky, can I have control so I can show the presentation?
Yes, you should be getting a notice now.
All right, just bear with me. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah,
all right,
Tom,
so
we're
thank
good.
you. All right, thank you, Zach. So my presentation is going to kind of cover transportation in Independence on kind of a high level. I want to start with the history of transit in Independence. We have provided transit service since the mid-1970s. It started out as transit to get people to and from shopping during the day. It has evolved over the years to something that is a little more robust and has continued to evolve. We've worked diligently to provide efficient transit services. Over the years, it has grown. We expanded service in 2012, and again expanded service in 2013, and then in 2018 expanded services yet again. Things that we have worked with our transit partners on has been providing free rides for veterans, as well as those who are ADA and our senior paratransit users. We've also worked to provide free Wi-Fi for all of our users. So we as a city have seen the need for transit and have worked diligently to try to provide needs to our residents. So we provide 5 transit services in Independence. We have our fixed route Intercity service. These are our local bus routes. These are the routes that operate from the transit center to places in Independence. We also have a fixed route Intercity service. This is the service that is provided by KCATA and provides service from the Independence Transit Center to downtown Kansas City. We also provide 3 different paratransit services. We have the ADA Intercity Paratransit Services. This is for those who are ADA qualified, provides paratransit curb-to-curb service from Independence to KCMO. We also provide ADA Intracity Paratransit service. Again, this is curb-to-curb service for ADA eligible individuals with origin and destination in Independence. We also provide non-ADA intracity paratransit service. These are trips for seniors, those 65 and older. Again, provides curb-to-curb service to destinations within Independence. All of our services are operated Monday through Saturday, essentially 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. We have 4 sources of transit funding, the biggest of which is general fund. We also receive FTA 5307 funds, as well as whatever passenger revenue that we get. This is revenue from people who ride the system, paying the fares that is collected and used to help offset transit costs. For the first time, we are going to use CDBG funds for our transit system next year. This is a result of the federal government giving us the COVID CDBG funds that will allow us to provide that as a one-time opportunity to plug that funding gap. This slide shows kind of a 3-year history of our transit cost as well as our transit revenue. The red line is the actual fare revenue that we receive. You can see that has been on a slight decline over the last several years. The green line is the amount of FTA funding that we receive. You can see that has shown a slight uptick over the last couple of years. The top line, or the blue line, is our cost, and you can see that those costs have really shot up over the last three years. And that middle line is the purple line, and that is identified as the gap. So what that gap is you take the cost, the blue line, and subtract out the FTA funding as well as the revenue, and that creates that gap. That gap is what the city is using our general fund dollars to pay for transit. Over the last couple of years, that gap has grown about 15.5%. So that means that over the last 3 years, we have paid that much more from the general fund to operate transit within the city of Independence. Kind of transitioning now to the budget. The city of Independence is reliant on sales tax revenues. Over the years, those sales tax revenues have been going down as people transition more and more to online sales away from the brick and mortar. When the COVID pandemic hit, it started the acceleration of the decline in sales tax revenue. You can see from that chart down below that our estimated revenue loss for this current budget year is a little over $4.6 million, with another $2 million revenue loss anticipated for next budget year, for a total budget loss of a little over $6.6 million. So what that means is that, as the city manager had said, we had a very difficult decision to make in order to present a balanced budget. The proposed 2021 budget does include the recommendation to eliminate the Intercity fixed route bus service. We would continue to operate the Paratransit Services for those qualifying for those services, and those would continue to operate both within the city and also between Independence and Kansas City. What are some of the next steps? As the city manager had mentioned, there are ongoing conversations with partners in the region to maintain our service, but look for that financial aid so that we can maintain this going forward. We would work collaboratively with the mayor and city council and our community and regional partners to seek a permanent long-term solution to our situation. That concludes my presentations, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, Mr. Scannell, I'm just going to ask the committee members to speak on their comments or questions. I'll start with Councilman Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Couple quick questions for Mr. Scannell. First of all, you listed the 4 sources of funding. How about the advertising that's done on those buses? Because that is a substantial amount of income, and I assume it goes to ATA, but will they use that to offset some of this for us? Because I assume we don't get any of it, is that right?
We collect the advertising funds. So those funds are collected by First Transit for those buses that are operated within the city of Independence. And those funds are deposited into our bank account along with any other passenger revenue.
So what stream of income is that? Can you tell me a figure? Because that wasn't listed in your 4 funds, the CBDG, the passenger revenue, the FTA 55307, or the general fund.
Yeah, I should have included that in the passenger revenue. As far as the ad revenue, it varies on a month-to-month basis based on what ads we have advertising on our buses, but it generally falls within $1,000 to $2,000 a month of advertising revenue.
So we will lose that stream of income. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And I guess those are under contract for the next year, so will we have to refund some money on the advertising?
I would have to reach out to First Transit to see what impact that would have. They pay on a month-to-month basis, but I would need to check with First Transit to know for certain.
Second question has to do with the Paratransit service. If we're going to continue the Paratransit service, does it cover about the same routes that we have now for the regular bus service?
Yes, our ADA and non-ADA paratransit services cover essentially the entire city limits of Independence.
And are they on the same routes and the same time frame approximately that the regular service was?
Yeah, so they operate essentially the same hours. There are a few ADA paratransit riders that have dialysis early in the morning. I believe they get picked up at like 5 a.m. And so, yeah, so it does operate essentially on the same hours as what our fixed route does. And it covers essentially the city limits of Independence.
So last part of the question is then, if those buses are not full, can other riders ride on the paratransit if they're not full?
In order to ride on the paratransit service, you have to qualify for that. So you would either have to be ADA eligible or be 65 and older in order to ride those. KCATA does operate a Ride KC Freedom on Demand, which is eligible for any rider to use. It's a think of it like an Uber. You schedule the ride picks you up and takes you to your destination.
Okay.
But that is a premium service, and there is a higher trip fee associated with that. It starts at $5.
Okay. And that's operated by ATA?
Correct.
And they just have to call, I guess they call for a pickup? Is that it?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, Councilman Van Camp, comments or questions?
I joined and went on with the KC ride, and if you're of a certain age, you get a better rate. I never used it. Actually, I think I used it once from the city hall to see how much it would cost and where it would go. I didn't get in the cab, I paid him, but I wanted to see if this was available, because we've been looking at this being a deficit, but something that we definitely wanted to have for the city. Have you looked at reinstalling these in the future? The lines, if we take them out?
You mean reoperating the fixed route service if we were to cancel the fixed route service?
Yeah, in other words, what you're saying is if this one-time thing, this one-time money is not the answer, and that in order to not be reliving this every year, that we're going to have other revenues of money.
And that's where we have the conversations going on with KCATA and our other regional partners to find a way where cities and governments are not faced with this challenge of providing transit kind of by themselves and struggling with trying to pay for it by themselves. So those conversations are ongoing right now, and will continue to go on so that we can hopefully solve this not only for this year and next year, but to find a long-term sustainable solution to transit funding.
Right, we've been
Madam
having
Mayor,
this
this-
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Van Camp. This is Zach Walker again, and just to support the questioning that you were bringing up there. You know, we've worked with the council the last few years to really identify where our, you know, not just in the very short term, but longer term, where our revenues headed and where our expenses headed. And you know, I think that's why the council gave the voters the opportunity to support the last fall, knowing that online sales taxes continue to be the wave of the future, and that's bearing out already in the revenues we're seeing. That is the only of our now 6 sales taxes, that is the only one that is seeing positive growth. All the other ones are experiencing double-digit losses at the current rate. And you know, not to be the grim reaper, but just being realistic, every day new information coming out from economists is pointing to a harder and harder row to hoe. You know, I was struck this morning by an article that showed over the last 10 years, this country added 20 million jobs. And in the month of April, this country lost 20 million jobs. They are forecasting 3.5 million small businesses will close in the next 2 months. You know, and small business is a backbone of this community. So what I think we're trying to put forward, just to be very direct to your point, is let us identify solutions that are permanent, ongoing, sustainable outcomes, so that the city's finances become more stable, more resilient, and we don't find ourselves in these positions of uncertainty moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, that was more or less that was it. The use tax being dedicated doesn't offset anything, except that the money that you would have come out of general fund is not, that it's covered by the use tax, is not used, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The that tax was ran once just to support general municipal services, and it did not pass. So the second effort that, based on feedback in the community, was to dedicate it for some high priority uses, and high priority again being what some of the feedback in the community was, and that was approved. And what that meant was $750,000 annually is to be allocated to support the animal shelter and its operations, and funding is then to be provided to hire 30 new police officers. It is not until both of those outcomes are satisfied that the revenue from that tax would begin to waterfall over to support the others. Mayor Weir and our legislative team are working very aggressively in the last days of the session to try to get the Wayfair legislation passed, which would allow expanded online sales tax to occur, which would accelerate, presumably, that outcome of those waterfalls being spilled into the other buckets. But our reality right now is that the tax is dedicated to support those two outcomes strictly.
Yes. So, and what I'm looking at here is a decrease in income, as you have so aptly described, and an increase in running of about 5% per year, which, if what Mr. Scannell said, it looks to be a rising above that if we were to try and see the future.
Yeah, well said. The costs, you know, just like anything in life, are going up year over year. While some routes are seeing continued strong ridership and increases, as a whole, the system is seeing a decrease in ridership, which means transit fare revenue is decreasing, and the amount of support that we get from our federal transit authority dollars hasn't been sufficient to keep pace with those rising costs and overhead.
We've been having these conversations over the years and trying, this isn't just this second going to close the deal because of the virus. this has been an ongoing troublesome affair from the beginning. I realize that most of what is going to be taken out is covered, but there would be I assume, some adaptation for specific individuals and their problems. But do we have something to set up to do that?
Yeah, when we alluded to at the beginning of the meeting that we're having these conversations, I'll be very specific for the committee's benefit. The conversations that we're having are primarily occurring with Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, who's the regional transit authority, as the name so indicates. We're looking really for two things out of those conversations, and let me be very complimentary. They've been very receptive in those conversations. I believe they're very committed to helping satisfy those two outcomes. But what we're after is, one, an increase in funding in those FTA dollars to help stabilize the cost of operations. But really, let's take a step back and let's look at the system less as a one-off, just an independence issue. But let's look at, how does this thing function as an organism across the region? When you bring into account the routes in Kansas City, Missouri, and Wyandotte County, and Johnson County, with our Eastern Jackson County partners, how can ATA play a strong role to identify who are the riders, where are they at, and where are they trying to get to, and how can we best make sure in the most customer-friendly but cost-effective way that we get those riders who need the service where they're trying to get to. If we're driving around with a bus, it's not picking anybody up. That's not helping anybody. But there are clearly people who are trying to get places, and how do we satisfy that outcome?
Right. I think, having discussed this over the years, that the availability is there. It's a matter of getting the individual. Thank you. I appreciate the data, which seems to be hard to get. I mean, we've been asking over the years about what the target is, how much, and I'm sure, as everybody knows, we've looked at a lot fare increases, which would be a handicap. But it seems to me that this stopgap measure is to prolong this. It is just putting us back on the same timetable that's going to rise, and that before this has got to go before the full council, I assume.
Tom Scannell, go ahead and answer the council members' comments about process here, please.
So this committee does have the power to consider the changes to the routes, whether to, like I said, make changes. So this body has that final say. The full council has the final say on the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak again, Mayor?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So I was sitting here thinking about the paratransit that will cover the same routes, and I don't know if it's allowed to designate a certain number of seats on that paratransit bus for non-paratransit, because I don't think the buses, either the regular route or the paratransit, is ever full. I don't have the figure. We asked for the figures, and it just says that they're decreasing on a couple of the routes. So I don't have any actual hard figures as to, I don't think any of the buses are ever full. But the paratransit routes, if we maintain those and designated, let's say, 5 or 6 seats for regular riders, I don't know if that's allowed. But if it was allowed, that may serve to allow us to continue the same routes with just one bus instead of 2. So that's why I was asking earlier about the paratransit. I don't know what the number of paratransit riders is, the average. And I don't know whether it's allowed under federal funds, whether we designate a few seats on that bus for regular riders. So, Mr. Scannell, can you answer that?
In regards to the ridership on paratransit, over the last 3 years, paratransit ridership has grown. We as a society continue to get older. That has pushed that ridership up. I believe this year we're on pace to do over 20,000 rides a year on Paratransit Services. A few years ago, that was 15, 16, 17,000 rides a year. In regards to your question about allowing non-ADA and riders to ride the same bus, I do not believe that is allowed under FTA guidelines, but I would have to circle back with KCATA to get you a definitive answer on that.
Can you check on that for us, Tom? And then the other part of that would be, can you check and see what % of the bus is full with paratransit riders on average? Is it half full? Is it totally full? If it's totally full, then there's no point in asking. But if it's not full and the paratransit buses actually are increasing the number of riders, but they're never full, then it would make economic sense to allow others to ride on that if there's room. So that's my question. I personally am against cutting bus service for the folks that need it the most. And the bus service was never meant and has never been meant to stand on its own as far as bringing in the money to pay for itself. It's just like our other public services like fire and police. They don't bring in the money to pay for themselves either. And so it's one of those public services, just like in Kansas City and other cities, that the city is responsible for public service. And this is one of those public services for mass transportation of some kind. And I just hate for us to lose any mass transportation if there's a chance that we can either get it funded this year or bite the bullet for this year, pay for it, and get it funded for next year. So that's why at this point I am opposed to cutting the service. And I think either we have to twist some arms down at KCATA or find another way. And that's why I was looking for another way with the paratransit. Thank you.
So I will circle back and get you answers to those two questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, council members. I do have several comments and questions, and of course, we'll continue to have discussion on the committee before we open it up for the public comment. I think there's two discussions that are very important, and one is very immediate, and then one is longer term. One, the immediate problem that we're facing is a shortfall in revenue. And in order to present a balanced budget, the city manager needed to identify $4 million in savings, which is a combination of the $2.7 million that we are projecting in lost revenue due to COVID, plus another $1.5 million of contingency to cover the unknowns of how long this pandemic may last and how long we are going to be limited into our ability to collect sales taxes combined with consumer confidence. So our immediate problem is we needed to identify $4 million in savings immediately. That has come in the form of reduction in staffing from funded and non-funded positions, reduction in programs that were planned, and unfortunately, this is a big ticket item, and it was something that there was no other place in the budget that equaled the 900 or so, $825,000 that could be taken out of the budget without additional reduction in public safety staff. That would have been, that we are now looking at reduction in police and firefighters, which of course, during these times, we certainly cannot afford to reduce staffing for our first responders. So I want to first, for the people who are joining the meeting today and the public, which I have repeatedly said over the last several weeks, I do not support reduction in the bus service. We were forced to do some reduction in some routes earlier this year to fund our retiree health insurance. I was very disappointed that we had to do that. My intention going into this year, and I believe the intention of the majority of the council, was to restore the service that we had to eliminate to fund the retiree health insurance in last year's budget, the one that we're currently in. And then COVID happened and put us into a totally different reality. So I want that to be clear, that this is not a matter of priority. It's not a matter of a lack of political will to have bus service for our community. I'm very proud of the fact that Independence has been a leader in public transit in our region, and it is my intention to continue to be so. So we have to come up with the money. That means either finding additional places to cut in our budget, or finding additional revenues from some other source other than what we currently rely upon, which is sales tax, fares from ridership, a small bit of advertising, and federal funding, or a combination of the two. So the longer, that's the immediate problem. The bigger discussion for another time is how we want to provide public transit in our city. And I've participated in many, many conversations and seminars and public forums about this subject for our region. As we know, Kansas City went to zero fare for their bus service. That didn't mean that somebody doesn't have to pay for that. It means that they were decided that they were not going to charge fares on their buses, and they would find the money to subsidize that elsewhere in their budget. And I know that the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority was working very closely with the state to help identify ways to subsidize ridership through state funding. Of course, when COVID happened and the state is facing a deficit as well, those conversations probably at this point are not very productive, or probably are not happening. But that was their intention. Public transportation is always going to be subsidized. There is no way the fares are ever going to cover the cost of the service. And I've long time said, why are we even charging a fare at all? Because the cost of processing that even greater offsets what you can actually charge as a fare. And when I declared the state of emergency on March the 12th, I talked with the KCATA, and it was decided that we were not going to charge fares. We were going to eliminate the fare box on the buses during the state of emergency, which we have done. And that was for the protection of the rider and the protection of the driver, to have no contact, to allow people to enter the bus from the rear door, so to best protect our drivers and the passengers. So, talking about what we're going to charge for a fare is actually not going to help in this situation, nor certainly in the long term. So what we have to decide long term is, do we want coverage or do we want access? If we want to be able to provide everybody in the city reasonably the same access to bus service, we can do that. And that is primarily what Independence does, is we have adjusted routes over time, but we have approached it in terms of having that kind of coverage where everybody who wants to ride the bus has a reasonably equal access to a bus route. The other way to approach it is through access, which is saying, what are the most used lines? Where are the pockets of riders in our city, and where do they need to get to? So identifying where the greatest number of riders are and where those destinations need to be, whether that's the hospital, the grocery store, whatever. So there's two different ways of looking at it. And that's bears some analysis at a later time, but what we need to do now is solve this immediate problem, because the chart that we are looking at right now is not likely going to change. Our costs are going up, our revenues are declining. The survey put out by Jackson County asking for feedback on consumers' comfort level with participating in certain activities as we start to reopen some businesses and activities. Public transit was one of the lowest across the board in every city in Jackson County, including Kansas City, that people still feel a very high discomfort level with using public transit during this pandemic. So those are, those survey results are publicly available, and there was just a very low level of comfort level. Now, we don't know who responded to that survey, if those are riders or people who aren't users of the system, but we can't expect that ridership is going to increase. It's been decreasing, and it's decreasing across the system, not just in Independence, but KCATA reports there is a decrease in ridership before COVID-19 hit. I think it's important to keep in mind the various opportunities that we have ahead of us. As recently as 10 minutes before this call, I spoke with Stephen Tilley, our lobbyist, one of our lobbyists in Jefferson City, who is contacted me regarding House Bill 1700, which is what we know as the Wayfair bill. And there is word that there may be amended onto that the cable franchise fee. So our lobbyists are working as we speak, as they have been throughout the session, to ensure that we do not lose the cable franchise fee that we currently collect, which is one of our very few dependable revenue sources, although it is a small amount in our budget and is itself declining as people cut the cord and no longer subscribe to cable services. If we lose that cable franchise fee, we will find ourselves having to cut even more from our budget. So Stephen Tilley is working on that for us throughout the session, and it is on the House floor, on the Senate floor as we speak. As part of the Wayfair bill, which is, as we know, the bill that would allow for collection on all internet purchases, not just those that have a presence in the state of Missouri. So thanks to our voters, we passed Prop P in August. We started collecting those revenues in January. We collected $90,000 in January. We collected $290,000 in March. I don't know about you. Not only am I not shopping in stores, I'm not shopping much online either. I don't need anything when I'm staying at home. And but people who are do have those needs, they are shopping online while they're staying at home, and I would expect that we will see those numbers continue to increase. And if we are able to get Wayfair passed, we will see that number increase even more exponentially, which will help not only our immediate problem, not certainly by June 30th, but that is, why we use lobbying firms to the extent that we do in Jefferson City to represent us. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we can't be at the Capitol. Otherwise, we would be there this week testifying on these bills and talking with our legislators and other legislators to gain their support. But our lobbyists are doing that for us. My questions are, the Ride Casey Freedom application, which is the Uber-like, you call and schedule a ride, will continue. The paratransit, Mr. Scannell, does that run on regular? I'm not clear about that. I thought paratransit was a service that you needed to call in advance and arrange for. I'm confused. Does it run on fixed routes during regular hours?
The answer is no. Paratransit is an on-demand service, meaning that you schedule that trip. It picks you up at the curb of your origin and drops you off at your destination. So it will drive from point A to B, whatever is the fastest route to get there. So it does not operate on a fixed route like the fixed route service.
Right. Okay, because I was confused about that when Councilman Robertson was asking about that. That's not a regular scheduled service. That is something that you call and request in advance, and they come and get you and take you to where you need to go. So I don't think that is a solution to say we're just going to let other people use paratransit. It's the most expensive service that we offer. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, it's certainly incredibly necessary, and I'm pleased that we have found a way to retain that service, but it is the most expensive service. My next question is, there is discussion about partially funding the service. If we're not able to come up with the entire amount, if we were able to come up with a portion of the amount, would that, could we retain a portion of the service past August 1st? And I guess I've been of the opinion that that doesn't seem like a real terrific solution to me. That, if we had to, it would be very complex without a lot of time to study it, to decide which routes we were going to keep and which routes we are not going to keep. As I said, that's more of a discussion for, do we want to provide access to everybody, or do we just want to provide access to people who use it the most to get to the most frequent destinations? But that's something I don't expect an answer on. I just say, that's something that I think we need to explore, is what can we do for 825,000? What can we do for, say, 600,000? What can we do for, say, 300,000? And look at some of those opportunities that if we are not able to secure funding for the entire amount or find additional savings in the budget, how can we do a temporary reduction in service And will that be adequate for a period of time? That's not my desire. My desire is to keep the service. My true desire is to expand the service that we have, the very minimum, to keep the service that we have. So as the city manager has stated, I am speaking with the KCATA. I spoke with Senator Blunt. I've spoken with Governor Parson. I've spoken with Troy Schulte to say, are there funds through the COVID relief acts, through the CARES acts, that could be accessed? Or are there funds that could be displaced? Are there loans that we could, loan agreements that we could enter into to secure money? And I'm saying for 2 years of service, just in anticipation that it will likely take us that long for our economy to recover enough to be able to go back to sustaining this. And we will. And once we figure out how to plug this gap in the immediate time frame, we need to have a broader discussion about what is the type of service that best serves our community. So we don't have, empty buses driving around that are costing the taxpayers of Independence and our visitors money that is very scarce right now. But we are, certainly here to explore all of the opportunities to identify this funding or identify a combination of funding and savings to retain this service. So I'd like to focus on the now and figure this out, and then continue the conversation about the future of regional transportation and how we can participate in that in Independence. So, Councilman Robertson or Van Camp, do you have any other comments? Yes, Councilman.
Yes, thanks. I would like to ask Mr. Scannell to research one other question for me. So if these routes wind up being cut, I would like to know what it would cost for us to provide a coupon book for Ride KC for the ones that are regular riders on the regular routes. I don't know how many riders that is. I know it's a fixed cost, and all we can do is guesstimate on that fixed cost, because it's $5 for the first 5 miles and $2 after that per mile. So all we could do is give a guess. But what if we furnished and targeted some money to the people that ride it the most, and furnish them a coupon book for so many rides per month for the next 6 months at least, to see how that worked out? And they could get 3 months worth of coupons to ride that Ride KC for the next 3 months, with possibly renewing it for the following 3 months. Can you research that for us, Mr. Scannell?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion from the committee? If not, I will move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. Madam City Clerk, if you would please call the speakers who signed up in advance to speak, and then we'll see if there's anybody else who has joined us.
The first speaker we have is Debbie Loffer.
Yes, thank you. And from sitting in on this meeting, I can tell that.
Let me interrupt you for a second. Hey, Tom, could you take down your slides so we can see the speakers? I'm sorry. There we go. Thank you. Debbie, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no problem. This is Debbie Loffer, and I've lived and work in the city of Independence. And I can tell from this meeting that a lot of thought and energy has gone into how to resolve this issue. But working and living in the city, there's also some very vulnerable populations, and they use that bus system as a lifeline to many sources, employment, medicine, food. And as we continue trying to find a resolution, I just want to speak for them because they have no voice, and so that we can reassure them that there's as much as possible that population is being looked at so that they don't lose more of those lifelines.
Thank you, Debbie. And I will tell you, and I'm sure the other council members have as well, we've heard from many, many citizens who depend upon this bus service. So their voice certainly is strong, and I appreciate that they are using that to contact their elected officials on this issue.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know it's a very tough decision, and anything that we can do, we'll be glad to do it.
Thanks, Debbie. Madam City Clerk?
Next, we have Amber Bauer.
I'm going to just kind of echo what Debbie says. Growing up here, and I've never lived outside of Independence, and now working in Independence and serving some of our most vulnerable populations, the bus is seriously their lifeline. It gets them to their mental health appointments, it gets them to their medical appointments, and it gets a lot of people to their jobs. And I'm just looking at the ripple effect. If they don't have access to work, then they don't have access to income, and then it's just a plethora of downfall from there. And I love, Mayor Weir, what you said, and just the thought that you've put into it made my heart kind of flutter. Because I know that we've all sat around tables having this conversation with one another, and the importance is there. So please just continue to have those, so the people that I live to serve every day continue to have that form of transportation.
Thank you, Amber. Madam City Clerk?
Amy Bolt.
Amy? I see you're here.
Yeah, I'm good. There must have been a miscommunication. I have nothing to speak on. I just wanted to attend the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kendra Burgess.
Hello, this is Kendra Burgess, and I'm the Public Policy Coordinator for the Whole Person in Kansas City. And we also service independence as well for people with disabilities. And so I just want to thank Mayor Weir and the members of this committee for underscoring the fact that paratransit will remain in service and unaffected by these closures, and just your thoughtfulness in thinking about those with disabilities in your communities. And I think that you've answered most of my questions thus far, but I guess the only other follow-up question I would have is what will be done to educate the public on these changes so that there is no confusion?
Well, certainly, first we have to make a determination, and I hope that what you are gaining from this discussion is it's not a difficult decision. It's a matter of funding. So, I mean, the decision isn't do we think it's important to have bus service or not? We do think it's important. We know it's important to have bus service. But if there are changes to temporarily to how that service is provided, we have, many ways to communicate that to the public, but we're, not to that point at this stage. Madam City Clerk?
Next, we have Rachel Hermes.
Okay. Rachel? Okay.
Next, we have Courtney White.
Courtney, are you on the call? Okay. Madam City Clerk?
Lisa Ewell.
Okay, I'm Lisa. I just want to say we need the bus. There are so many of us that we rely on it for our survival. To go to work, to go to the pharmacy, to the doctors, to get groceries. We have no other alternatives. From my house, it's almost a mile to the nearest store by foot. I can't do that. So what are we supposed to do if they do stop the buses? Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry. Well, that's what we're here to discuss today. So we don't have an answer for that at this point in time. Ms. Ewell. Becky, our next speaker.
Mary Jane Tyra.
Yes, I'm one of the ones that uses both para and the regular routes. Para to get me from point A to point B, but sometimes there's a D, E, and F thrown into that. And at $3 every time I get picked up, it is a minimum of $6. And I have been known at one day to spend $21 just to do the errands that I have to do, because some of the fixed routes are full. Some of the fixed routes are so full that I feel guilty taking a seat or two seats actually from those routes. I've been on those buses where there's standing room only. I've also been on the buses where it's just me and my PCA on the bus. It depends on the time of day. It depends on weather. It depends on the time of the month, on what your rider is going, count is going to be. Para works. I like para. Para, you generally have your PCA, and sometimes before COVID, there were, maybe one or two other people on the buses. I try to ride para when I can, but I'm on a very fixed income. So I'm not able to do it every time. You're also limited to the number of bags that you can carry. Well, sometimes I have to go to the grocery store, and I go once a month and do my grocery shopping. On para, I can do it. On regular transportation, I can't. But on regular transportation, if I want to go to the mall, I can do that with no problem. I can get from where I live in Eastern Independence to the transit, pick up the mall bus, and go to the mall. If I want to get to Social Security, that becomes a danger for me, for the driver, for everybody else on Nolan Road, because they have to drop me off in the middle of the intersection. I mean, there's no other place to drop me off. I am in a wheelchair. I cannot get on and off in grass. So they have to block a driveway to let me on. Nolan Road, one of these days, somebody's going to get killed. But taking the fixed route from the high school student who doesn't live far enough for a regular bus, but lives far enough that it hurts to walk, and their parent doesn't have transportation, getting to Metropolitan Community College, getting to Walmart, the doctor, having to choose where you need to go know your routes, and you can do it with no problem. My main issue is it keeps changing. You all have lowered the number of hours that the buses run, and they need to be increased. We cannot go to church of our choice because none of the buses run at night. None of them run on Sunday. I can't get to a city council meeting, which I would love to go to, because the buses don't run at the right time. I would love to be able to go out and have dinner out, opposed to, well, let's go have lunch. Not everybody that I'm friends with can have lunch. If you take the regular routes away, not only are you hurting the students, the workers, and the people, but you're hurting this city. We lived 25 years in a small town, and when we were ready to move back up here, I chose Independence because of the bus system. That is the main reason we moved to Independence, was because of the bus system. And now you're taking that away. And it needs to stay. There's too many people that depend on it. You may not see it, but the riders see it, the drivers see it, the mechanics see it. Everybody that works within the system sees it. And yeah, like I said, not all the routes are always full. But if you take my route, which is the yellow route, and one of the least run routes away, I am set to use only 1/4 of this town. I have very few good restaurants. I have 2 grocery stores that I can go to. I like to shop other places. I like to shop better deals. I wouldn't be able to go to the mall. I wouldn't be able to go to the hospital. I wouldn't be able to go see my cancer doctor. I wouldn't be able to go do anything in any other part of the town unless I spent at the minimum $6 with Para. And there's places that I want to go in this town. I am passionate about this. There's got to be a way. Increase the hours, increase the fares. You increase Para. Yeah, we moaned, we groaned, we bitched, we hollered, but we still pay it. Increase the fares. You'll get your riders back who decide, I'm not going to pay that. Increase the days of operation. Put Sundays on there. I would love to be able to go to the church of my choice. And I can't. 6 years I have not been able to go to church. And I want to go to church. There are parts of this town that aren't even touched by regular route. Those parts need to be looked into because they've increased in businesses and what is to offer for people. There are people that I talk to a lot that don't know that Half Price Books is in Independence and not in Kansas City. So Half Price Books is not on any of the regular routes. And to get there, you have to walk 1.5 miles down a hill. And it's the simple fact that we're losing revenue by not allowing us to go everywhere in the city. Para, I can get to Half Price Books. And when I go to Half Price Books, I spend money. That's revenue that y'all are missing out on. Because a lot of people are going to Kansas City to Half Price Books because they don't know that there's one here in town. So I have a lot more to say, But I'm going to go ahead and stop now.
Thank you, Ms. Tyra. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, our next speaker.
Cheryl Frank.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't have my camera on. I'm still in my pajamas. Anyway, I have lived in Independence over 40 years and I really depend on these buses. I am legally blind, so I cannot just hop in my car and get from point A to point B. I do have paratransit and ADA eligible, but I'm speaking for everybody who doesn't have that. It's really important. Not only are you hurting the citizens who depend on it, you're hurting the businesses also. I mean, I know you said it probably wouldn't help to increase the fares, but I believed in the first place they never should have went free for the paratransit riders anyway. We should have all been paying something. So raise the fares up. I know when they decreased the red and green hours this last time, I went to that meeting, the public meeting. There was about 6 of us maybe that showed up to that. And they said they just decreased those two. They were going to decrease the red and green because not very many people rode from the hospital into the transit center. But that's really not the case. I tried to explain that the drivers do not make people go up and re-swipe their cards. So it was showing that no one was riding back from that point. A lot of people do go to the hospitals. They go to the college. So the red and green route is just as important as all the other routes. But I know everything's important now. And I just would really hate to see this service canceled. I mean, surely there could be something done, like maybe just having one bus that drives the green, comes back the red, one bus for the yellow and the orange, one bus for the blue and the purple, cut down on maybe every other hour. Something is better than nothing at this point, you know? So if you could maybe just look into doing something like that. I mean, like I said, something is better than nothing, and I will take anything at this point because I can't walk a mile. I'm a mile from the nearest grocery store also. And in the wintertime, I can't be walking that far, you know. So just please take this into consideration and look into different ways of things so this doesn't happen. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Frank. Madam City Clerk, our next speaker.
Renee Robbie.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I too am legally blind, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to keep the paratransit buses, but here's one of a couple of problems with that. When you take the paratransit from point A to point B, and it's good about that, but you have to wait X amount of time before you can schedule your pickup, your return pickup. And sometimes the places I need to go are only a 15-minute stop. I too am a citizen who works here, lives here, pays taxes here, spends my money here. And the way I'm doing the math in my head, it seems like it would hurt this city a lot on sales tax or whatever we use for revenue if we can't get to where we try to spend our money. And I don't know where the assumption came from that the buses are not full, but I've been on the buses more times than not when they are packed. Now, granted, they're not packed right now because of this pandemic thing, but they will be again because they are, especially in the summertime when everybody gets out. And I rely on them to get from point A to point B because I can't see. Well, I can't see necessarily where I'm walking, and some of the sidewalks in the streets are not the most level. So I will walk up to a point, and then I have to use buses. And that's one of the reasons I've lived in Independence for 21 years. And as I was losing the vision that I needed to drive, I started riding the bus system 10 years ago because I lost enough vision that I can no longer drive. I love them. I mean, it beats staying at home and not being able to go anywhere because I don't because I can't walk that far. It's 5.5 miles from my house to the closest Walmart. I'm 2.5 miles from a grocery store. I live on the Orange Route, and it's only every other hour as it stands. But still, that's okay with me. I'm okay with that. I'm like Cheryl. I'll take anything as long as we don't lose the fixed routes completely. Because I mean, I'm asking as a citizen of Independence, what can I do to help this stay intact? Is there anything that I can do to help guarantee that buses will stay?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that's a very valid question and very thoughtful. And I appreciate that. You know, we're hearing a lot of information today. We're asked our staff to do some more research. We're still pursuing a lot of different avenues. But
well, I too am ADA eligible, yeah. But that's just because that's what they told me to do. I'm okay with paying a fare to get on the bus. I'm okay with you raising the. That's what it takes. Just please keep the bus system, because it is everybody's kind of agreed on this. It is our lifeline to keep. If we can't get anywhere, the people I know dozens of people who work here and live here and take their kids to daycare here, and they all use the public. They spend their money here, pay their taxes every year. They use the bus line as their transportation to get everywhere. This pandemic thing cannot possibly last forever, please.
That's true. Thank you.
I hope not.
Thank you very much. Madam City Clerk, our next speaker.
Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councilman.
All right. Are we gonna call on a vote for this? Because I have another meeting.
I don't think there's anything that we're gonna vote on today, Councilman. We're just hearing from the public and hearing a report. I don't feel there's no recommendation. I don't feel it needs to be made. So if you need to leave the meeting,
I have a test to take.
Okay, thank you. Madam City Clerk.
Nanette Willoughby.
Hello. As I explained in my email earlier, I am a commissioner on the HUD Housing Board. I'm the resident commissioner, and several of the people here in our building rely on the bus system, and they are very upset, to say the least, that there are changes to be made. Nobody likes changes, but the thing of it is, we have a lot of people that do need the service to get from point A to point B. We have a lot of people in our building that are 65 and older. But we do have a lot of people that are in the mid-range, between their 30s and 40s and 60, that need to get to the doctors or need to go to the grocery store, need to do things that they need to do. And they have depended on the bus system. I know, I've lived here for 8 years, and I know that the people in this building have relied heavily on the bus system. They go out there and they wait for the bus to show up. And to not have a service available to them is very concerning, to say the least. I do know that there is a taxi service type thing, share ride or whatever. I don't know if that's even available anymore, but I think that it might be something that people can look into. But we do know you were asking for people to see what the whole, the people in the community felt about the bus service. And I have a lot of people here in our area that are very concerned and very reliable on the bus service. And we will be very upset if we do not have any at all. We need something. I do know that in the past, before COVID, I have done the Parabus to get from here to the hospital because I had an appointment that I couldn't drive. And my bus wasn't full. There was like one person besides me. And to me, I honestly think if there is a way that we could arrange for those Parabuses to allow regular riders, as it was mentioned earlier, maybe 5 seats on the bus. If the bus is not full for a regular rider to get on that bus, I don't see where there would be a really big problem. But it's just something to check on and look into. And we will be looking and listening and seeing what comes out of this and how things develop between now and when we know for sure whether or not we're going to have our bus service. And I thank you for letting me talk about this in respect to my constituents here in the building and around the area, because it is very important to many, many people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam City Clerk, our next speaker.
Our final speaker who signed up is Nina Woodson Falls.
Hi, Nina.
Nina, I think you're muted.
You're muted, Nina.
At first, sorry, I'm with some Falls. I'm with Human Relations. I love living in Independence for 30 years. And I never rode the bus here, but I do want to say that this is an essential service, as the mayor and some of the other city council members have stated. I wrote down, I'm very good at listening. Lifeline really always gets to a person, because that is exactly what it states. And essential, that's important. But I also want to say supportive. I believe people who ride the bus, in many ways, they're also supporting the city. As much as we give to them, they do give to us. And that's why they're so passionate, the people that do ride the bus that are speaking today. I've learned so much in this one conversation because I haven't ridden the bus here in Independence. And now I'm starting to put it all together. I'm glad we're having this. I'm starting to understand through the community speakers how they use the system. I came on originally because I know that in my house, I can only pay for so much with so much money. So I was all ready to say, we just got to find the money, let's find the money. But the money isn't there. My original thought was going towards Councilman Robinson's idea of increasing some type of revenue. I was thinking coupon booklets sound wonderful. I was thinking maybe $5, on a pass a month, $10. And the reason why people would be willing to do that, and I'm sure they would, because this is essential, and because if this went away, they would have to do Uber or a relative. Trust me, these relatives are charging, because I know a little bit of everybody. And Uber costs so much that just to go, I live out here in East Independence, just to go, to 24, I've been told, because I kind of talk to everybody. So I know people are willing to do that. And $300,000 is a fortune, but if everyone was willing. I love the coupon book idea. I wish it was mine. But I also was thinking about businesses who have people that are income earners that may not have as much. If you lose your car, you still want to get to work to get your car fixed or whatever. And so you are willing to spend money on your worker. Is there any way that businesses who have workers that more or at the middle range or low range where they're willing to give in to a fund? I know everything has to be voted on, but you need emergency money. I wanted to say a GoFundMe page and we just plastered on City 7 and you never know. But I'm trying to be creative and trying to make light of it because it's so important. And I'm with the mayor and the other people on the council, even though they're so very thoughtful, I would be more inclined to say, this is essential. This is supportive to keep our revenue going. So many people work in places that they can't fix their car if it breaks down or they don't have a ride. Those places are essential even as we go forward. This is panic time, but even as we go forward, there are going to be businesses and companies that come into independence. We're very desirable because of our size and how we work with each other. They still need this bus service to be sustainable and to, as the mayor would have, she wants to expand it. And of course, I believe it should be on Sundays because I've had so many young people I work with in the community. They say, we want a job at the mall, Miss Nina, but we can't get there and I can't drive. I just heard a little bit of everybody and everything. And I think more people than you think would be willing to help pay for your shortfall. I believe in the city of Independence. I'm not a rich lady, but I personally, would put it out there. I'd give $50. I don't even know where I would come up with it later on the other end, but we'll have to eat less that week. I'd be willing to give in this shortfall because the mayor and the city council, which I really respect, and all government workers, and Becky does an amazing job keeping us informed. I think that you all have no other choice. I think you all have to ask us. You're trying to figure it out amongst yourselves, but maybe we can be the answer in a small way. And people feel good when they can help, each other. But I think it's about money right now because it's crunch time. But in the long term, I would want an expansion. I would want this more secure as an essential thing. I believe the more people that come into our city, no matter what their income, a lot of people ride buses now. They leave their nice cars, or the subway, and we don't have that. They leave their nice cars parked. They will get on the bus if it is a bus system that takes them where they need to go and they can relax. I think it's future thinking. We've always thought of bus service as if you don't have a way. I think the future is buses and transit is going to be the way that people get around. I really believe that, with things increasing in price and maybe young entrepreneurs coming. And that's really what I have to say, but I do know it's about the now. And if you put a call out for people to help you, I'm willing to get out there on City 7 or a GoFundMe page without even laughing and do what I have to do. So, and increasing the bus fares, I have personally taken a small poll amongst people I know that ride. They're willing to do $1 because it's still less than Uber, or they're willing to do that coupon booklet that I never thought about, or willing to pay every month $5 or $10 more. You spend it on something else, you'd rather spend it on your bus service. But thank you all for letting me speak. I'm a person that doesn't ride here, but I used to ride, and it was essential when I lived in St. Louis with my grandmother. We had no car. That's the only way we got around. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nina. I think that concludes our speakers who signed up in advance. Is there anyone on the call who did not speak who would like to speak?
I just have one more thing I'd like to say.
Yes, ma'am.
One of my residents is sitting here with me, and she has made the comment that she has a hard time getting to the government places she needs to go, and without the bus service. And also to get online to do anything, there's a lot of our people that are not computer savvy that can't get to a computer. So these are things that were mentioned, and I explained that I would bring them forward to you. And if there's anything that I can do for our group and for the whole city of Independence, I would gladly do something to help you out. So, and the coupon books, Mr. Robinson, was fantastic. And I agree with Nina. I think they're a really way to go. And it would help our economy and help our bus service a great deal. So that was my additional comment, and thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no other speakers, this concludes our agenda for today. Mr. City Manager, is there anything else that you'd like to bring before us?
The only thing I will remind the public of tonight, we will have a budget town hall, which is just an opportunity for those who weren't able to tune into the city council meeting Monday night to see that presentation again, and also submit questions. But no new information will be presented, but simply wanted to make the public aware. And Mayor, I have nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for joining.